All right, welcome to another edition of the Tundra Podcast. Now, it is no secret that we here at Tundra love inspiring the next generation to take on the new challenges of the world. And I'm really excited to introduce the founder of How to Change the World, Mr. Jason Blackstock. Jason, welcome to the show.
Erik, it's fantastic to be here, and the alignment with inspiring the next generation to make a positive impact, music to my ears.
Beautiful. So for those who are not familiar with the initiative, could you give us your elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch. Early career professionals and students all have tremendous talents, whether it's as engineers or as political scientists or as accountants. But all too often, they are hearing on the news about the grand challenges of climate change, sustainability, plastics in oceans, ecosystem degradation. And there's that sense of anxiety. I have no idea how to do anything about this. How to Change the World is a program that I led the development of at University College London as a professor, one of the top universities in the world, to help students realize that the skills and capabilities they have can be mobilized to make a positive impact on exactly those challenges. And we shaped up the program at University College London to be a required 4-credit course for 1,000 students a year. And then we got asked to run versions outside continually and do it for more and more people. So we spun out a social enterprise, and here we are right now running one in partnership with State, and it's fantastic to have Tundra involved.
Amazing. So how long have you been at this?
So the first version of the program we ran in 2013-14, so about 8 years now, and we piloted it with 600 students. And we learned a lot from the first time we ran it about how the sort of concerns and uncertainties that people have when trying to tackle these big, wicked challenges. And then we combed the earth to find the best approaches, the best ways of structuring interactions so that individuals can learn to work in teams with different perspectives, with the diversity of disciplines and backgrounds, work with real local stakeholders in order to figure out how they can change the world. Where's the piece that they can contribute to, and how can they make an impact? And so we've iterated it, and now almost 7,000 people have taken the course over the last 8 years, and we continue to grow every year.
Unbelievable. Now, I have seen some testimonials of some students that have claimed that it's been one of the most formative things that they've done and set them off into an entirely new career or path that they might not have even figured they'd be getting involved in. Could you talk to a little about the experience? What do students go through in this program?
Erik, yes, I'll give a quick summary. First, I'll say that those sorts of testimonials are why we do what we do. That's why we spun out the social enterprise, because the ability to empower that next generation is just what we're all about. The experience, so when people sign up for our program, the experience starts then. It doesn't just start on the first day of the course. It starts then with us sharing some information about things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is what we use as the frame to say, hey, there's lots of challenges out there. Here's 17 of them that the countries of the world agreed are pretty bloody important, and we need to get them done in the next decade. So let's start with that as a framing. And then we ask them a bunch of information about, what do you care about? What do you bring to the table in terms of knowledge, background, expertise? And then we use that to figure out how we can put them in teams and on challenges that will align with their passions, but will give them a framing of diverse colleagues to work with, diverse perspectives that they can learn from, so that from the moment they show up at the program, they're already getting different insights than they could possibly get from their day-to-day job or their day-to-day studies and discipline. Once they show up, we put them through a quite intense program of activities. So our workshops are always very intense. I mentioned that we scoured the world to find pedagogies. Well, some of them that we looked at are some of the things that the Navy SEALs use in terms of their intense processes of how do you provide people with an intense experience that helps unlock and expose your mind to different ways of looking at the world. And so it's an intense process wherein we provide guidance and structure on what to do as a team working together, but they're driving the process. They are working, participants are working in a team right from the minute one, trying to figure out how they can make a contribution to the challenge we've given them. Along the way, we support them with a world-class teaching team. We introduce them to local stakeholders in the context that they're looking at working on the challenge. And we bring in sustainability and innovation experts to coach and mentor them and listen to what they're doing. And I think you're going to be joining us for a session that's coming up in exactly that category. And they help coach and mentor. And then finally, the participants produce in a digital portfolio a summary of all the work that they've done. And invariably at that point, the local stakeholders in those contexts look at them and go, I never thought about it this way. Some of these we are going to take and implement in the real world and do. And that's the learning journey that we try and create. And then participants join a global community of 7,000 and growing who all want to keep doing this for their career going forward. So that's the learning journey arc that we try and create for them.
Unbelievable. And I'm super fortunate and blessed enough to be joining as a mentor. And I got to see firsthand, these students are incredible. They're very aware, very in tune. And what I was so impressed by was the diversity of backgrounds in terms of I'm in plumbing, I'm in organic chemistry, I'm in everything. And they're all coming together to bring their unique perspective to a common problem. And I find that cross-pollination works so much wonders. So often we can get stuck in our echo chambers, and when everyone's thinking the same thing, someone's not thinking. And I know here at Tundra, we've really taken that diverse background in terms of your experience might be from a completely different industry, but come bring your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience to our team to help round out everything. And we've had a lot of success with that. How important is cross-pollination to this program?
There is nothing more important, to be honest. It's cross-pollination in terms of disciplines, in terms of, you mentioned things like plumbing or organic chemistry. I'd mentioned political science, humanities. We started at University College London. The 1,000 students I mentioned started predominantly in engineering and computer science, but we increasingly bring in other perspectives through experts that attend the program, local stakeholders, but also just the diversity of perspectives that aren't necessarily disciplinary. And that's where the local stakeholders come in. If you're living in, I'll just use an example. One of the challenges that we've had for previous programs focused on Inuvik in northern Canada, and we had the mayor and we had some of the directors from the Inuvialuit Regional Energy Corporation involved, and they bring perspectives about what it's like to live and breathe in an environment that goes to -60 in the wintertime. Now, most participants have not experienced -60 because it's insane. But having that's just one example of the fact that it is about cross-pollination, but it's about diversity more broadly and getting as many different perspectives as possible. So in the teams, we mix as much diversity as we can with the participant base that we have, but we always try and flesh that out with that external network as well to make sure that the voices of underrepresented communities, of communities or populations that don't often get a voice in some of the issues that are impacting them, are also part of that conversation and at that table. So cross-pollination, we call that one of our core values is diversity. And one of the other ones is humility, because you have to start by saying, there's lots of stuff I don't know. No matter how many years I've worked on this challenge or in this area, there's lots I don't know because I can't possibly have all the perspectives. So I need a diversity of others to help me break that open. And that sounds exactly like the sort of process you're talking about. So it's essential.
Definitely. Now, given that you've been running this program for quite some time, and these students that have been going through these different, is it yearly or is it, how often are you actually running these?
Great question. So we run things called open programs, and our open programs run 3 or 4 times a year, and they're week-long intensives. And what we generally have there is during those week-long intensives, we'll have students from dozens of different universities, colleges, institutes, not only here in North America, but Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America, all attending the same program. along with early career professionals from companies, from organizations, from governments that are saying, we need some of this innovation process ourselves. How do we internalize it? And those open programs are typically run to align with breaks in the academic calendar. So we've got one coming up in February of this year, which is perfectly aligned with the breaks of most Canadian institutions. But we'll have others coming up in April, and we're looking at the scheduling of the other ones across the year. In addition to those open programs, we work with partner institutions like SAIT, in this case, the program that we're running right now, to run custom programs for students from SAIT, for example. And we run those as and when partner institutions ask us to do it, whether they're higher ed or whether they're corporate partners.
Incredible. Now, this seems like it's got a lot of momentum, and it is growing across the country. How are you funding this?
Great question. So predominantly, we run a tuition fee model. So participants attend our program. Sometimes it's the participants who pay themselves. Generally speaking, it's organizations or the universities themselves that are paying us to run the programs for their students. Obviously, students pay a lot of money to their universities to begin with, so this is part of the extra provision of opportunity for their students that they look to provide. And we, particularly when we're looking at underrepresented populations that just really could not afford it, we look for grant funding. We've had funding from the National Research Council of Canada, for example, and MyTax and others to reach populations that wouldn't be able to otherwise access the program. So it's a diversity, but we work on a tuition fee basis because that's the easiest way, and it's typically about 500 Canadian to attend the program.
Incredible. Now, given that you've been able to watch some pretty powerful transformations throughout the program, are there any success stories that stick out to you that you could share with us?
There are, the trick is picking between them because there's many, but one example here in the Canadian context, we had a participant, I think it was in the February program from this year in 2021, but it might have been from August or a previous one. And they went on with colleagues on the team that they had worked with to found a new fund that they brought money into in order to fund entrepreneurs who wanted to work as social entrepreneurs here across Canada. So they've raised, I think it was $500,000 in order to fund other initiatives that go on. And they turned around and said, if I hadn't gone through this process and met these other colleagues, I could never have done this. And so it's those are the sorts of stories where it's not just about what they've learned, but what they've gone on to do with it that is so inspiring. And then as you know, Eric, a lot of our alumni come back as part of our teaching team for future programs. And so that's one of the ways in which there's sort of this pay it forward. And we've very much seen the relationships that get built by alumni who've gone through things with participants go on to have impact. And an example related to Inuvik, one of our teaching team in the February program with some students ended up developing ideas that would try and provide better educational opportunities, better access to information for populations in the North around things like access to energy and how do you develop sustainable energy. So there's all these great examples. And I literally could go on for the rest of the podcast about different examples, but I will pause there.
That's awesome. Now, we've obviously seen some challenges with the pandemic, and that obviously put a damper on in-person sessions. This historically was an in-person gathered event, and then obviously, like so many of us, had to pivot online. What advice have you been giving students to network in this new age that we are, and does this program function as a great networking opportunity?
Let me start with the answer to that last question. Yes, and that's one of the things that we had to wrestle with when figuring out, okay, are we going to go virtual or are we just going to mothball and wait until we go back to in person? And we decided to give it a try, but we very intentionally looked to build the virtual learning environment on platforms that enable as much interaction and networking as possible between participants, with experts, et cetera. And so we actually ended up turning to the gaming industry. Like they build platforms that are designed to bring tens of thousands of people together to play Fortnite or things like that. Great, not our interest, but the platform has all of that functionality to allow people to interact and network in different ways. So we've retooled those types of platforms for the educational purposes. And in that environment, during our program, we strongly encourage participants to take advantage of that sort of environment, to meet people, to go through virtual social networking exactly the same way you would if you were moving between table to table at a speed dating professional environment. You can create and replicate those types of things as much as possible. They can still be at home wearing pajama bottoms, but it still leads to the same networking. And the advice that I would give to participants living in this new normal, whatever it is to absolutely seek out virtual networking environments. Some of them are not going to work well. Some of them won't have that type of platform, but keep experimenting with it. Because if there's one thing that we've learned from going virtual, it's that in the digital world, physical boundaries don't matter. So you can actually, the ability to bring in local stakeholders from Copperbelt in Zambia, or from Abagwe in Colombia, as well as from Calgary, even in a program in Calgary, it's much harder when you're running a physical program to do that. In the virtual, entirely easy. And the more participants, more anybody looks for those environments that truly break down those physical boundaries, the more this becomes as much an opportunity as a pain in the butt.
Think about that. I mean, this is like a silver lining, right? Where you're right, you wouldn't be able to chime in someone from halfway across the globe, because a lot of these challenges that you're focusing on are global challenges. They are things that we face as a human race. This, to me, is an exciting after effect of, you know, I've analogized to a forest fire that is terrible and it burns down the forest, but it also creates new life. Some seeds will not sprout unless fires have burned through. And I think we're starting to see some sprouts pop up. And I just love that you've been able to not succumb to the challenges and keep finding a way to make these amazing programs take place. And to the point of cross-pollination, taking something from the gaming industry and using it in this is pretty incredible. Now, I had never been on Discord before. I didn't even know it exists. I'm not a gamer, but I got this invite. What is Discord? I'm like, okay. You guys had tech support. I was up and running, and I'm like, whoa, this platform's actually incredible. And I've been to a lot of Zoom style network functions, and I have to admit, they've all been, subpar. It's just not the same. But I do have to admit that the Discord platform was the closest thing I've come to for digital networking. I mean, I connected with so many students, and what was so great was that they took initiative and followed up after the session, connected with me on LinkedIn. And I think this is sort of the new way to connect with folks that are in industry that do want to help. And there's so many of us. I don't know if this generation understands how eager the existing people in industries all over, regardless of the industry, we all want to help, because this is the generation that is going to crack these codes, right? And if our wisdom and our experience can help them fast track cracking those codes, along with amazing programs like How to Change the World, we are going to be much better off as a community in a global sense.
110%. And it just as a great example, we end up frequently oversubscribed on the number of mentors who want to come, the number of sustainability or innovation mentors who want to come for our programs. So we continue to expand the number of participants in our programs, and that's in part to keep up with the number of mentors who really do want to work with the next generation, work with those eager to take their time in order to contribute. And it is, and to that analogy of the forest fire, what's the best way of putting this? The pandemic has most certainly lit a fire in higher education. The trends that were already there, digitization, MOOCs, the whole idea of Coursera and edX and access to information, it was moving. It was definitely going. In the last decade, you saw a lot of that sort of stuff, but most universities were sort of dipping toes in the water. And the pandemic basically came and shoved them all in. And as a result, you're seeing a whole bunch more innovation. And this is where we're finding our partnerships with higher education institutions are similarly beginning to blossom and explode as they're going, hang on, this is a different way of doing online education. It's not an old white professor standing in front of a Zoom screen recording an hour-long lecture and waiting for you to, I don't know, do a quiz next week. That this is all about interactive, cohort-based, community-based learning and direct engagement. And that, I think, is I am hopeful that this is a transition that higher ed is going through much more rapidly now, and also because students are demanding it, because they can watch the best professor in the world from MIT teach fluid dynamics. They don't need to see an assistant professor who's teaching it for the first time. What they need is to be able to understand how any of that fluid dynamics can be applied to things that they care about, and to work in how they work with people who understand other dimensions of the problems to apply that, and work with mentors from industry and work with local stakeholders. And fingers crossed, we'll see more and more of this. I'd love my co-founders, particularly with the business mind, don't necessarily like it when I say if we put ourselves out of business in 20 years, that's success. But I really do think if 20 years from now, higher education has this as sort of a core pedagogy that is fundamental to all degree programs, we've succeeded.
Amazing. Now, have you thought, is this just in Canada right now? And where else is it?
So I mentioned University College London. So I am currently in Alberta. I'm an Alberta boy, born and raised, but I live in London in the UK, and that's where we actually developed it. University College London in London, UK. That's the origins of how to change the world. And actually, we've had institutions that we partner with on every continent, well, not Antarctica, but every other continent. We've had educational institutions, students attend from there, and educators get fired up about the idea of taking these sorts of ideas back into how they design their courses and what they do at home. So it is truly global. We certainly have a strong presence here in Canada, but it's in many different places.
And who are the ideal participants that you're looking for?
Great question. The ideal participant is someone who is really keen on taking the knowledge they have and figuring out how they can address wicked societal challenges with it. University students is clearly one target audience that we work with closely. Early career professionals is another one. But we've had participants in our program who are in their late 60s say, I'm early in my next career. Does that count? And the answer is absolutely, because it is about the core learning outcomes are about both skills and processes that are useful, but also mindset change. The ability to reframe the types of problems you're working on and reframe the way in which you see other people you can collaborate with and work with and integrate their perspective, so that this is where the transformation really happens. The skills and the practices are useful, and we hope that they get applied in the future, but we also know our participants, our alumni, will go on to find other tools and skills that will further advance from what we can provide. But the mindset is the big change. And so anyone who feels anxiety about a societal challenge and they want to make an impact, climate change, energy transitions, sustainability of any kind, that's the ideal participant. So we really do take a broad scope. Our bread and butter, as it were, is definitely university students and early career professionals.
Excellent. Now, that's the participation side. Who's ideal for the mentor and expert advice side?
Great question. Mid-career and senior career professionals who want to give back. And across any discipline, across any expertise, it's basically those who have spent time, who came out from their undergrad or their early career experience and realized, for all I knew about whatever mechanical engineering I studied or political science, when I met the real world, wow, did I have to learn a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of how I can make any impact with what I know. And it's those sorts of hard-won lessons that are so valuable to be able to share with the participants to say, I see you're going down this path. I've been there before, and this is the wall that's about 3 feet in front of you that you can't yet see. And maybe you just want to swerve a little bit this way. So it's those with that hard-won experience that are incredibly valuable. And we have our own, these are not mutually exclusive roles. We have a lot of our alumni who come back as mentors, not just on the teaching team, but also as mentors to share their experience a couple years later.
That's excellent. Now, we're rocking and rolling with this cohort as we speak. When's the next one in Alberta?
So the next one that participants can sign up for is the February program that I mentioned. So it will be in February, and it's going to be in the reading week. I should have the dates up, but I don't have them right in front of me. I will make sure to get them in the
show notes.
We'll put them in the show notes. That's absolutely perfect. And it will be the February program. That's the next part. We are also talking with our SAIT colleagues about another one for SAIT and Alberta institutions, and we're expecting that to be announced in early 2022.
For someone who is interested in learning more, where can they go to figure out all the ins and outs of the program?
www.htctw.org. That's the initials for How to Change the World, htctw.org. You can also go to how-to-change-the-world.org, and it'll take you to the same place, but it's a lot easier to type in HTCTW.
Excellent. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your inspiring story. And thank you for the work that you and your team are doing. It is such an honor to be a part of it and to see the fruits of the labor that has gone into a program like this result in the inspiration and the fire igniting inside these young minds. I love it, and we're happy to support it. And anything else that we can do, we would love to get involved in future events. And I strongly encourage anyone who's watching today, if you have a young son or daughter, or you as a mentor want to get involved, go check out the links. And I cannot recommend it enough. So Jason, thank you so much for taking the time. Any last closing remarks?
Eric, just thank you. And my only closing remarks is for all of those out there who want to have an impact on these global challenges and you don't know how, you can. So please, whether it's through How to Change the World or through any other processes, don't give up. Go out there, find other people to engage with, find diverse perspectives. You can and will change the world for the better. Amazing. Let's get out there and change the world. Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks so much. Thank you. We'll see you soon. That was awesome. That was great. Right on the money.